the time to attend this webinar. Okay, I want to say thank you once again for taking the time to attend this webinar. My name is Sarah Esendi and I work with Nuclear Power and Energy Agency as the Director, Legal and Regulatory Services and Corporation Secretary. I'm also a member of C.Arb and FCIArb, and looking forward to the platform that we have today to share something new. I call it the new kid on the block, and that is nuclear energy and the opportunities that are out there for members of the C.Arb fraternity. So without further ado, I would like to introduce all the panelists today. We're expecting one panelist from the EPRA, but we'll start with the two that are here. And, you know, I have the privilege of introducing two chairs, a former chair emeritus and another chair emeritus who is also a chair. So I'll begin by acknowledging the presence of FCS Jacqueline Waihenya, who is also a chair emeritus of the Chartered Institute for Arbitrators Kenya branch. And her portfolio is so massive. And I want to just read a little of it. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a managing partner at JWM Law LLP. She is also an ADR expert and a chartered arbitrator of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Then she's also a chair of the Institute of Certified Secretaries. She is a certified advanced construction adjudicator at C.Arb and holds a diploma in international arbitration. She is a governance expert and also a fellow certified secretary of Kenya. She is an International Mediation Institute mediator, certified mediator, and also a chartered mediator. And she also serves as a vice chair of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce. She is also a vice chair of the Mombasa Law Society. So karibu sana FCS Jacqueline Waihenya, chair emeritus. Our next panelist is a colleague and friend. His name is Engineer Eric Ohaga. Engineer Ohaga is also a past president emeritus of the Institution of Engineers Kenya. He is currently the Director, Nuclear Energy and Infrastructure Development at Nuclear Power and Energy Agency. He is also a fellow member of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya and a consulting engineer with the Engineers Board of Kenya and also of Engineers Board of Rwanda. And he is also a registered engineer in Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda. He is also a member of the Executive Council of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations. And he is also an honorary secretary of IEK and a registrar of the Architectural Association of Kenya, a former registrar at Architectural Association of Kenya and chairman of Architectural Association of Kenya Engineers Chapter 2007-2013. So that's a brief of our panelists today who have a wealth of knowledge in this area of nuclear energy and also ADR and the role that it plays in this new space. So before I start this session today, I would like to ask Engineer Eric Ohaga to just give us a brief of what nuclear energy entails. Engineer Ohaga, the floor is yours. Tell us a bit of what is nuclear energy and why it is, as I said, the new kid on the block, and what are the expectations that Kenya has in the road to having its first nuclear power plant. Thank you.
I appreciate this engagement that we are just about to have. Nuclear energy is a new kid in the block in African continent, having only South Africa now having the operational nuclear power plant. And basically, when you talk about nuclear energy, it is simply the splitting of particles. And when you split these particles, we harness the energy that comes from these particles. And these particles, we are calling them uranium. And the uranium is available in Kenya and also in Tanzania, Zambia, Niger, in Africa here. So the process of splitting these atoms is basically for harnessing the energy that we then use to heat water, and this water is superheated in the steam generator and therefore utilized for purposes of power generation. In the past, or so many years after the World War II and World War I, many a times people knew nuclear for bad reasons, and this was mainly for weapon generation and for mass destruction. But in the year 1953, there was a very powerful speech by the American president, Winston Dwight, in 1953, that did declare atoms for peace. And from that date, many countries started utilizing nuclear source for purposes of generation of power. And in the global scene, we have over 454 operating nuclear power plants, and this contributes about 10% of the generation mix globally. There are 57 new nuclear power plants that are under construction, and these in Africa, we have only South Africa having an operational nuclear power plant, having been commissioned in the year 1982. They have 2 nuclear power plants in Quebec, generating 1,900 megawatts. The other African country that is constructing 4 nuclear power plants is Egypt, and the first nuclear power plant will come on board by the year 2029, and the other 3 will come on board 2030, 2031, and 2032. Now back to East Africa, Kenya is in phase 2, and we are following the International Atomic Energy Agency milestone approach that guides us on how to develop the nuclear power plant in our country. And it goes through phases, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So phase 1 is the preparatory works that a country has to undertake across the 19 critical elements. And then you are evaluated on these 19 elements and through an integrated nuclear review mission. And after that, a country is able to demonstrate that you are now knowledgeable to make that decision to go nuclear or not to go nuclear. So for the case Kenya, we had done this from 2010, after having been established as a committee within the Ministry of Energy. And through this committee, we did undertake pre-feasibility studies that took about 5 years. And in 2015, we invited the International Atomic Energy Agency to come and check the level of preparedness of our country. And at that time, they gave us 15 recommendations, 8 suggestions, and 4 good practices. Again, we spent 5 years trying to close the gaps on these particular recommendations, and we called them back in 2021. And in 2021, when they came over and looked at the 19 infrastructure elements that each embarking country is supposed to develop, they found out that Kenya had made great progress. And as a result of that, we moved from phase 1 to phase 2. So Kenya is steadily in phase 2, where there are preparatory activities that are happening in regards to construction of the first nuclear power plant. We have undertaken extensive human resource development at master's levels in this country, where 127 Kenyans have been trained on nuclear engineering at the graduate level. And this is from South Korea. And also we have memorandum of understanding with China, where we are training additional Kenyans for purposes of preparation to deploy our first nuclear power plant. In regards to siting, which is also another very important issue that a country has to decide where to locate the nuclear power plant, we have done detailed site evaluations, and we've come up with 3 possible sites: Siaya County, Kilifi County, and Kwale County. Now, in these 3 sites, we shall be undertaking critical and detailed engineering and scientific studies to be able to confirm the suitability of this site. So that is the next phase, where Kenya is going to undertake feasibility study to confirm this site in preparation for the first nuclear power plant. Our timeline is 2034, where we shall commission the first nuclear power plants, and 2,000 megawatts shall be added into the national grid. As you're all aware, the president has talked about additional 10,000 megawatts. Out of the 10,000 megawatts, 6,000 are going to come from nuclear power. And we are working hand in hand with the owner operator, that is Kenya Electricity Generating Company, KenGen, that has been appointed in December 1st, 2025, as the first owner operator of the first nuclear power plant that is going to be constructed in Ciarb County. We also have a regulator which is undertaking the oversight of the nuclear power plant, and this is the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority that was established in the year 2019 through the Act of Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Act, and they are responsible for the oversight, the licensing, and regulation of all nuclear activities. And they will be providing us and issuing us, the owner operator, with the permits, initial permits to undertake the characterization, construction permit, and eventual operation license when the nuclear power plant comes on board. In Africa, we have Ghana and Nigeria that are working hand in hand with Kenya in phase 2, and a number of East African countries again, which are in phase 1, including Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And as a continent, we are working together so that we don't leave our neighbors behind. And this is basically for purposes of ensuring that Africa has stable load, Africa has reliable supply, Africa has clean source of energy to cause the necessary transformation that is required in this country. So that is the progress report in regards to the nuclear energy. We're also using nuclear technology for purposes of research reactor, which Kenya is also planning to construct the first research reactor at Konza City. And this one shall come on board by the year 2030. And through this research reactor, we shall be able to undertake tests and experiments that prepares the country for the eventual construction of the first nuclear power plant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Engineer, for that. At least we all have an overview of what nuclear energy is and where we are as a country. I would like to then move to FCS Jacqueline, who will briefly tell us what's in it for ADR practitioners. So FCS Chair Emerita, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Sarah Okumu, our fellow here in the Institute, and my fellow panelists, and all of you who have joined us this afternoon to talk about nuclear dispute resolution and what it means. And the first thing I would say, Engineer Eric Ohaga and your team, I know Sarah is part of your team, well done for all that has happened in the last 10 years or so, and putting us on the map where nuclear energy is concerned. So for those of us who may be interested in participating in this space, there is a magic year, 2034, when we can expect that we will go live and with this new form of energy. But we don't have to wait until then, because once the process comes to start constructing the nuclear reactors and all that goes with it, including the feasibility studies and all the different stages, then we have an opportunity to be part of that process. And for me, what I believe nuclear dispute resolution means is that we will use the same mechanisms, the same foundation in Article 159, 2C of the Constitution, so that we can be able to put in place processes and mechanisms that will be used to, first of all, underline, prevent, and then manage, and finally resolve any disputes that may arise from the development, which is what is ongoing right now, the operation, what we expect is going to start coming, and I'm sure it's going to come in different phases, and regulation. There is also the financing aspect. And in the fullness of time, we can also expect that there will be decommissioning of nuclear energy projects. Because once we start with one, then that means that this is the beginning. And in future, we can expect to see many different opportunities and developments where we can plug in. So some of the areas that we should expect to see and to be involved in will include energy law. Let us look at energy dispute resolution. It has its own dynamic. It's specialized, and I think I saw CS Ibrahim Kitoo. I'm sure he'll also be able to speak to that. There's construction law. I'm sure there will be quite a number of EPC projects, others as well. And also public international law may come in because of the conventions that Engineer Ohaga so ably put us through and took us through. There's also a huge element of environmental law. And for those of us in governance, there's the regulatory compliance, and there's also insurance liability frameworks. What is distinguishing about nuclear dispute resolution? First of all, it's highly technical, and right from even how the engineers will work with the reactor designs, the safety system, safety is really key, and there are quite a number of conventions that look to this. And of course, there's all the other scientific and technical issues that relate to radiation. And then the usual engineering, construction, dispute resolution areas of delay, defects, safety compliance. And then now the other questions that will come in, and I'm sure Ibrahim is probably better placed to speak to issues of regulatory complaints, and also how to resolve any disputes that come from licensing and oversight, as well as alignment with international standards. For our friends, colleagues in constitutional and humanitarian law, we're not going to be left behind, because there are many, many public interest questions. There are many, many environmental, social government, ESG aspects as well. There's public safety, there's environmental protection, there's intergenerational equity, there's public participation, and then of course, this long-term horizon, well, I won't call them disputes now. The construction of all these facilities have a long lifespan, and an even longer lifespan on when we can expect to be using them. So there is an aspect of multi-billion-dollar infrastructure. There's financing. So there are so many different players from so many different backgrounds that will be required because of the construction cycles, the operational cycles, and then of course there's the financing, and then the sovereign involvement. So there's quite a bit for all of us. So we should be thinking, and we should be preparing our people so that they can be able to participate in this area. And when I say people, I mean all of us, so that we can, first of all, prepare ourselves. I sat in some of the discussions and conversations that happened when ICON happened just not too long ago. And one of the comments that was made is that if we have somebody who is in even primary school today, has a dream of becoming an engineer one day, has a dream of becoming a lawyer, has a dream of becoming an accountant or a financial expert, this is a time that we should be beginning to train them so that they can be prepared. And we need to place ourselves, because there's a real opportunity for each and every one of us to think through, where do we plug in? So does Kenya have any nuclear arbitrators? The short answer is no, but neither does most of the rest of the world. What I do know, and I've interacted with some of them, is that there are a number of nuclear construction, well, they call them nuclear adjudicators. They come from our background of construction adjudicators, and some are dispute review board experts, dispute boards, DBs experts in short, who are already in this space, and they're making a name for themselves. And usually when we see adjudication, dispute boards, we know that we're looking and we're thinking dispute avoidance is where we need to go. So where they are, because they have been and they're there, then they are looking at nuclear dispute, nuclear construction disputes, reactor supply contracts, delay and dispute and disruption claims, safety compliance disagreements, and then, like I mentioned, decommissioning of projects. And then, of course, the big one is the state investor energy disputes. So for us specifically as Kenyans, today we can tell ourselves we are not behind. Rather, we are at the same frontier as many other jurisdictions, and we are now looking to build specialized ADR competence for the nuclear sector. And this definitely creates an opportunity for C.Arb, for engineers in the country, for energy regulators, for environmental lawyers, for governance professionals, and dispute board practitioners. So we have a real opportunity to shape an African framework of credible, technically competent and trusted nuclear dispute resolution capacity, building the ecosystem. And I am sure that we are just not going to place titles. What we are going to be looking at is real, practical, competent capacity to be able to look at all these disputes in all these areas. Because I'm a firm believer that we have the expertise, we have the capacity. Kenya probably has the best professionals in the whole of the continent, if not the world, and we are already serving in many different spaces. Sarah, I think I could stop there. I don't know whether you want me to say anything more, because I do have quite a bit more to say.
Yes, and very informative, Madam Chair. And I would really want you to hold a bit. I know you are pressed with time, and that's why I can allow you to go on and finish, because you have an emergency engagement that has just come up. So maybe I can allow you to finish, and then maybe we can move on with CS Ibrahim and Engineer Ohaga. So you can proceed.
Great. Yes, so thank you for that and allowing me to continue. Because the other question we discussed when we were preparing, other than whether we have arbitrators, is then now that we have this goal, this dream to create capacity, then how do we go about putting together a specialized panel? So of course, the first thing which we have great capacity for here at CIArb Kenya branch is to create the foundational capacity building, use the what we already have. Let's see if how we can train to, first of all, master the dispute resolution approach under our Energy Act and align it with other charters like the Energy Charter or other instruments, international instruments. We need to train ourselves on what is nuclear, not only nuclear energy or nuclear dispute resolution, but what about nuclear governance? The IAEA standards, I know Ibrahim is an expert in this area because it also looks at standards, licensing, environmental safeguards, and the technical terminology that will be par for the course in this particular space. So it's to look at create, hybrid professional training. I know we've been talking about mediation quite a bit, but let us ask ourselves whether and how we can put in place the capacity, the professional capacity, some individuals who can have legal, technical, regulatory, and financial and environmental and even insurance expertise. And I'm a big believer in not only training the dispute resolver or the neutral, but even the counsel who are going to be presenting these cases should they arise, and also the other technical professionals, the engineers especially, but then like you've heard, I've mentioned finance experts. I've mentioned my colleagues in the governance space. And then also really build capacity on dispute boards. Because in other jurisdictions, what they keep saying is that for the construction of the nuclear reactors, for the construction of the nuclear plants and all that goes with it, having dispute boards in place has really been a useful technique for dispute avoidance, because we want the projects to start and complete on track and on budget. But then also, you don't want to be seeing the disputes playing out in public when we're looking at something that has such a massive, impact, not only on the current, but the future, and where if things go wrong, they could be catastrophic. So This is a call for partnerships and collaborations with key institutions locally and internationally to strengthen expertise, credibility, and knowledge exchange. And we also need to look at, I think there is a program that is in the works, and this really is something that the chair, Professor Wayne, should speak to, because we are at a progressed discussion on how to see people with these skills being translated into a powerful, potential, practical, available pool of experts in the areas that will be required. I've put here some knowledge areas. I will request that Clement shares my slide. I think I'd already shared this with you. And basically what we want to do is to continue pushing the bar to get our specialized recognized, and they can be part of this pool. In July this year, we will be having a DRBF Kigali conference, it's the Africa conference. And should there be sufficient interest, we do intend to train dispute board potential members or people who want to get these skills. So please keep a lookout and be ready and available to be able to understand how dispute boards work, and then how we can also translate this into the nuclear, the nuclear power and energy space. And so there's opportunities for all of us, C.Arb, engineers, regulators, lawyers, professionals, governance professionals, and dispute boards. So this could be a defining opportunity for each and every one of us. So I'll just say nuclear energy is treaty-driven. Some of the things that we will look at are the major nuclear instruments, the international conventions and treaties, and then just to see how each of them will how they should be covered when it comes to dispute resolution in this space. So there are many things that we need to understand. What's the jurisdictional complexity? Are there public policy and constitutional concerns? Is there any potential for challenges to enforce out of Kenya? We are signatory to the New York Convention, and for arbitration, we know it's already adopted into our laws. But then how does all this work in light of all the other conventions? So what about evidence? What about governing law and contractual structuring? Some of these are areas that we will need to remind ourselves about. We already know that, and how then does it interact with our constitution? So the way forward is to strengthen contractual safeguards. Let us be ready, because when it comes to putting the contracts in place, we are hoping there has been a big push for local content for you who is practicing here. But we have to be able to demonstrate that we have the capacity to put the contracts in place, and also to align with not only domestic frameworks, but also the international legal framework, and then also to build the different institutional capacity. We are pushing and pushing and pushing for dispute avoidance to be recognized, to be practiced, and to be part and parcel of not only our lingua franca, but also to be able to do this in practice and practically. So the strategic imperative is to ensure that the complexity of nuclear projects demands a convergence of legal sophistication, technical literacy, treaty awareness, and institutional credibility to achieve effective enforcement and investor confidence. So I want to end with this call to action to challenge NuPEA, to challenge C.Arb, to challenge the engineers, IEK, even the respective regulators in our professions, and also within energy and within all these different spaces, also governance, everybody, to prepare the future ADR practitioner in this sector to not only resolve disputes, but to shape the architecture of trust, of compliance, of dispute avoidance, and legitimacy in one of the world's most sensitive and strategic sectors. So thank you so much, CS, I'll call you CS because you're my member on the other side, CSR Okumu. Thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you on this. I will nevertheless express my apologies because I have to quickly change gears and move into something else. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and all the very best for the rest of the for this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, FCS, Chair Emeritus and my chair at the Institute of Certified Secretaries for that well-informed input on how there is a space for everyone in the nuclear energy dispute resolution theme. And I think we all need to realize that when she put there nuclear arbitrators 0, that means all of you here are potential nuclear arbitrators. When I see 0, I see opportunity. And that is why we need to build capacity to be able to have as many Kenyan arbitrators in this field, because Africa is actually going nuclear. Now, our other panelist is with us now. Yes, Ibrahim Kitoo, who serves as the head of legal at the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. And CF, karibu sana. And I know you have a wealth of experience, especially in PPPs, and also as a regulator in managing disputes. And I think my question to you will center around mediation. You note that in implementing energy sector projects, they are normally complex projects. They involve a lot of funds. And as a result, where the money is, disputes flow. And energy projects also generate a lot of interest when it comes to environmental protection. And also in matters nuclear, there's always the concern that how are we taking steps to ensure that not only the environment, but human beings are not exposed to any radiation while implementing these kinds of projects. So my question to you is actually based on your experience at EPRA and your guidance on whether mediation does play a role in managing disputes or potential disputes within disputes. And this is an opportunity for us to know whether mediators do have a role in the ADR nuclear energy scene. Karibu sana.
Okay, thank you, CS FCIArb Sarah. I hope you're able to hear me from that end.
Yes.
Okay, good. I was worried because I'm in a place whereby you are not guaranteed of internet connection, but it's good that you can confirm that you can hear me. So firstly, let me first welcome everybody and of course appreciate NuPEA and of course the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators for putting up this particular webinar. And then of course for the interest expressed by various people in terms of participating. So Sarah, the first thing I want to say is that speaking to mediation, what comes to my mind is exactly what mediation is, who are the parties involved, and what are the principles governing mediation. And of course, you can't discuss mediation without also referencing Article 159 of the Constitution. And of course, I think we are all pretty aware of the provisions of 159, which encourages all various types of ADR in dispute determination by our courts and even generally. So mediation is actually one of the ADR mechanisms. I know for quite some time we'll be speaking about ADR to mean alternative dispute resolution, but I think imaginally we are looking at HR as an appropriate dispute resolution mechanisms. So I think there's an argument that it's no longer an alternative, it's appropriate. So of course, the first thing is when you talk about mediation, you're just looking at a case whereby you have one or two parties, they are not able to agree, but then they reach out for a neutral person, somebody who is completely not interested with the matter, who is able to put them together, and they're able to, be encouraged to sort the disputes amicably. So as we speak about mediation, for me, I look at mediation as the highest tier of ADR, in that I think it's the most amicable way of resolving disputes compared with the other appropriate other methods like arbitration, adjudication, expert determination. So I think until just recently, and especially for complex projects, be it construction, energy projects, or high-value commercial contracts, mediation has actually been seen as an outlier of dispute resolution. I've ever participated in a forum whereby somebody say, can you really talk about mediation in complex disputes, commercial or otherwise? And I think we'll all agree that that also appears to be a feeling or even a position taken by quite a number of people. Most of us have been able to identify mediation as a way of resolving softer disputes, maybe family-related disputes. But there's still that clique of people who believe that mediation is a preserve of, soft disputes, and maybe who believe that it has no role in complex projects. I'm actually converted. I no longer believe in that. I believe that mediation is equally, if not better, an appropriate way of resolving disputes in literally all disputes, complex, non-complex, because I think it gives optimal results compared with all the other methods. And the first one is, of course, preserving relationships, ensuring that if there are transactions, they continue to be implemented, like cases of things like litigation or arbitration. So I think that's the first comment I want to say about mediation. Until the other day, there was a feeling that it's a preserve for softer disputes. The other thing I will be keen to mention is that when you talk about mediation, for me, the key principles about mediation is that it's a party-driven way of resolving disputes. So even as you speak about the third party is just there to handhold and actually continue cheering or even motivating and encouraging, the disputants to be able to agree to a solution which is sustainable and which seeks towards sustaining the relationship the parties have had or the parties will want to continue to have. So I think that's one of the things I'll speak to, but it's very important to note that it actually has its own underpinnings under the Constitution, Article 159, just like any other methods of resolving disputes under ADR. So Sarah, to try to answer the question of applicability of mediation in the construction, in the energy sector and complex projects to so say, I will say yes. I am very convinced that mediation actually has and can play a very critical role in resolving disputes in energy sector and energy and related infrastructure sector disputes. And the starting point will be that every day, in fact, when a project is being implemented, you find that as it is the nature of complex projects, there are times the parties will be uncomfortable with each other. Either of the parties may feel like one of the parties are not being able to deliver the contract or not delivering as per the contractual terms and obligations. And much as we never see this playing out outside, at the project level, you find that we have that project manager, we have the engineer, and then of course we have all the parties representative, including what we call the project team. So routinely for complex projects, you find that literally every day, when there are those softer disputes, all those disputes before they even get escalated to the level of dispute adjudication board, there's a lot of mediation which happens, at the team's level, whereby parties are able to identify possible or actual breaches or possibilities of breaches, and the parties are able to actually come together. The only difference is that in such a case, you may not really have a mediator, but you find that the way the parties are able to resolve the disputes at that low-level project level, there's some principles about mediation. The parties are just cheering each other to ensure then that they are able to address possible cases of breach. Or if there are cases of breach, then those breaches will be able to be remedied at the earliest time possible before they escalate to the level of maybe being referred to dispute education board, being referred for expert determination, or even being referred to, arbitration. So mediation, yes, not in strict sense, may apply at that level, because I'm saying that the missing link to close the loop in terms of purely now saying that mediation happens in its four senses is only the fact that we do not at that level have somebody who is a neutral party. But we have had cases whereby you can even have dispute education board members participating in ensuring that a project is actually delivered within time, within scope, and as per the contractual terms. But the way they approach their assignment is that they do not, yes, they wear the tag of dispute education board, but then you find that at that low level whereby they are playing the role of disputes avoidance, they are actually acting like mediators. So we actually at a point whereby I can say that the line sometimes can also become very thin, whereby yes, you are an arbitrator by title, but in terms of the role you are doing, and this actually happens very much in cases whereby maybe dispute education board members are playing the avoidance role as opposed to a case whereby they are resolving the disputes. That kind of hybrid, I think we call it MedHub. So at such a case, then you can talk about mediation being practical and being practiced at the point of project's delivery. So I think that's what I want to say about the role of mediation in both the energy and complex infrastructure-related projects. For me, it's a reality. There's a lot of mediation. Maybe it may not be seen, but there's a lot of mediation which happens maybe in terms of principles and in terms of practice to deliver highly complex projects. In terms of nuclear, I'm not so sure whether I can speak about mediation for nuclear, especially in Kenya, because we are yet to deliver nuclear projects. But I can say that you can speak about mediation when you are talking about the project's preparation, feasibility studies phase. And I'll give you an example. For example, right now, I know NuPEA is heavily engaged in terms of being able to deal with the preliminaries on nuclear plant development. Of course, NuPEA is delivering programs, a lot of research, and a lot of public participation in terms of where the power plant will be done, in terms of how it will be done, addressing issues to do with safety, addressing issues to do with health, and of course, issues to do with basically ESG cycle, environmental social governance of the whole nuclear power plant development, and of course, construction and development, the full cycle. So we are at a case whereby you can actually identify, for example, I remember when NuPEA tried to deliver, to have the nuclear power plants done in at the coast. If my memory serves me well, I think there was either a case or there was an attempt to file a case. And for me, if you had to ask me, mediation can actually be applied at the point whereby maybe you have parties or even citizens who, if they strongly feel that maybe the way the power plant is being done, it's not is not able to meet the threshold of effective public participation, and it's not addressing issues to do with health, environmental concerns, then at such a case, the way you effectively engage the community or even the project affected people you can actually do it through mediation, whereby maybe the two parties, that means the community affected, people affected, and the implementing agency can be able to come together and allow a third party to be able to, to assist them or enable them in reaching a compromise or resolving a dispute before it escalates to maybe through courts, whereby we are seeing cases whereby maybe failure to annex those methods like a mediation then means then that dispute can actually escalate to the level of a petition by human rights activists or environmental health enthusiasts. So yes, the answer will be mediation has a place, both in terms of effective resolution of disputes related to the energy sector and high complex projects of large scale and pace. And this can be applied at different levels, like I've been able to speak to. And of course, the key thing is that the principles appear to be coming out more than the actual mediation. But I think, a short answer to that is that mediation is live, it is practical, and it can actually be utilized in resolving disputes touching complex projects, and of course in projects which are dealing with which I ideally would be touching on constitutional petitions if mediation was not harnessed at the lower level of the project's delivery. So, Sarah, I think those are my few comments about the applicability of mediation in complex projects, be it energy or nuclear.
Wow, you actually you've hit the nail on the head, especially on community-led mediation. And I think that has definitely been a problem because, and Engineer Ohaga will speak to this, the concern that members of the public have about nuclear. And this is actually from a point of lack of knowledge about the peaceful application of the use of nuclear technology. And where there are disputes, I believe we have not really put it across that mediation can be an option before people proceed to rush to court and stall a project which will actually be beneficial to the country. So thank you so much for that insight. And I think I want to...
Sarah, maybe just to add something about maybe the way the authority has been able to harness mediation in resolving disputes within the sector. As a number of you may be aware, the energy sector or energy regulatory related disputes are actually regulated, and we have an energy disputes resolution governance framework provided under the Energy Act of 2019. And just to speak to how we've been able to harness into that framework, maybe innovatively, is that sometimes you find that maybe people who are aggrieved by our licensees, and our licensees stretch from public utilities, Kenya Power, Kengen, can be Ketraco, and emergingly it can even be NuPEA or even Kengen when they seize the role of owner operator for the nuclear power plant. And of course, including even, our licensees in the petroleum sector, the oil companies and the gas companies, including even, the energy contractors, because EPRA actually licenses all those players. You find that sometimes parties are very keen, perhaps, to rush to court. Maybe they have a grievance against Kenya Power, a grievance against Shell. And out of knowledge, sometimes people just think that the dispute resolution is as generic as it is for every sector. So sometimes, and actually quite often, almost 60% of the matters which come to us, you find that for some reason, they have actually been filed before the High Court or even ordinary courts, the general courts. So one of the things you will actually realize is that the way the Energy Act is actually structured, it expects that before any party files a case, for example, any agreed party files a case against any of our licensees, and the ones I've been able to mention, the first point of call is that you should be able to address your grievance to the licensee. And the way EPRA licenses, one of our license conditions is that we have a clause under the license which obligates our licensees to be able to demonstrate to us that within the organization or within the entity, there is a robust framework whereby any party who is actually aggrieved by the decision of the licensee can, as a point of first call, be able to forward their disputes or their grievance, and then that licensee is supposed to address that grievance. And what is expected is that Parties are only allowed now to escalate their disputes or grievances to the authority if they are able to demonstrate that the licensee has not been able to adequately deal with their grievances. Either they have ignored their grievance or they have been able to deal with it, but the party is still not satisfied. So to that extent, then parties are allowed actually to escalate their grievances to the authority. And what happens is that the authority is supposed to make a decision, and of course, a fair decision to both parties. If the authority is able to find that the licensee is at fault, then of course a decision is made and communicated to that extent to the licensee, to the agreed party, and of course the licensee is equally involved. Before the decision is made, then of course the authority is able to exercise discretion in terms of the complexity of the matter and the documentation provided, so that then, especially for matters which are not heavily controverted, then the authority can make a decision without hearing the parties, and that decision becomes binding to the parties, of course, subject to filing, an appeal to the Energy and Petroleum Tribunal. In most cases, we'll actually invite the parties to submit on the dispute, both parties, furnish the authority with adequate documentation, either in support of their case or rebutting the case, depending on which side the party sits. So at such a point, then what happens is that if the authority is convinced that this is a matter which doesn't need the authority to intervene, but you can clearly tell that the parties are able to resolve it. Sometimes we also encourage parties to resolve the matters through mediation. And of course, at that point, then if the parties are not able to resolve through mediation, then the authority still picks up the matter from where it's left and it's able to deal with it. But the first thing is that usually put a threshold whereby we are able to encourage the parties to resolve the matter without necessarily coming directly to the tribunal. And then, of course, at the end of the day, a decision has to be made. If the parties are not agreeable to the mediation, or if the mediation has not worked, then of course the authority picks up the matter from where it left. So administratively, we also encourage and we actually practice mediation in such cases. So I thought it is good that I mentioned that.
Yeah, that's very insightful. And the interesting thing about the nuclear field is that we will have two regulators. We will have yourselves, and we will also have the Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority, which will mirror some of what you do for the other entities in the sector. And they need to borrow a leaf from your structure in efforts to ensure that we are not rushing to court, filing constitutional petitions, and that actually ties up a lot of taxpayers' funds. So that's very, very insightful, and I'm thankful for that. I think we have all learned something from how we can incorporate mediation as part of dispute resolution for complex contracts. So over to Engineer Ohaga, and I really want you to speak to how nuclear projects span decades. You have a nuclear project running for even 80 years. That is after commissioning. And all these will have complex contracts, and they will have dispute resolution clauses. In your opinion, do you really think that these clauses can withstand the test of time? Noting that some of us may be there when they are being signed off, but will not be there the moment we are decommissioning a nuclear power plant. So I would like you to speak to whether you can be able to just assure us of the ability to withstand the number of years in implementation and ensure that dispute clauses are succinct to be able to take us through 80 to 100 years in which the plant will be operational. Karibu, engineer.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and I appreciate that for a nuclear power plant, in fact, we are talking about a century plus, because from inception, as we are talking about the Kenyan case, it's been 12 years since we started thinking about nuclear power plant. Now, if you're talking about commissioning being 2034, that then adds another 9 years to about 12 years. So that takes us to 20 years. Now, when you start the operation of this nuclear power plant, the current technologies that we have can take us to 80 years and 100. So we are talking about 120 years. These are 4 generations of people, grandchildren and great-grandchildren being born and seeing the life of a nuclear power plant. So this is a very long-term venture, very complex and long-term as compared to other conventional power plants. And therefore, this scale of project then requires that we should be able to adapt to changing times. I also want to say that this is one area or one sector where technology keeps on changing. From 1954, when we had the first nuclear power, about 72 years ago, we have moved from generation 1 technology to now generation 3++, getting into generation 4. And this has taken like every couple of decades, there is always an improvement. And these improvements relates to safety features. And these safety features, when they are improved from one generation to another, then every other nuclear power plant operating worldwide has to ensure that they incorporate these safety features in their nuclear power plants. And therefore, that means it's like a live development or modification or innovations that are happening across the globe in all the operating nuclear power plants. And in the nuclear industry, we say that an incident anywhere is an incident everywhere. It becomes a global issue that must be addressed by all the operating nuclear power plants. So in the nuclear industry, again, we are talking about very many documentations, hundreds of thousands of documentation. That means then you cannot manage it through the normal way of our documentations that we have. We have hundreds of thousands of flow diagrams, hundreds of thousands of contracts. So this then brings me to the question as to whether the traditional ways of managing our contracts would suffice for a nuclear power plant. Just the other day, I was happy to note that even our KRA has now adopted an AI filing systems whereby you only spend 2 minutes and you are good to go in regards to your income tax system. So in regards to the arbitration clauses, the traditional ones, and as to whether it's able to stand the test of times in regards to the nuclear industry, I think we need to start to think along other perspectives, especially in the utilization of AI and the bespoke management systems that can then be able to manage all this documentation and put them in a manner that is understood by the experts and the operators of the nuclear power because of the volume of documentation that is required from inception, feasibility study, construction, operations and maintenance, all the way to decommissioning of the nuclear power program. So I think these clauses we have traditionally where arbitration clauses are provided for in power purchase agreements or any other agreement, the supply agreements, where we provide that when parties are aggrieved, then there will be a seat where they can solve their problems. That is possible for normal and conventional power plants. But where now we are looking at very highly regulated regime. And as you rightfully put here, we have the nuclear regulator that therefore looks at every step of the development of the nuclear power program. And if they're not certified with it, then they cannot give a go-ahead for any development to happen. So we must actually embrace technology, digital platforms, this artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, as practitioners, so that we are able to even understand some of the claims that comes from the disputes that can arise from the nuclear industry, given the scale, the complexity, the competencies level that are required, so that we are able to manage the claims in the right manner. So I must say, yes, we must move with times, because 80 years from now, things will have changed. Legal frameworks will change. Technology-wise, I can assure you every 20 years, there will be a change in the technology. And therefore, these things then must be live in our everyday today. And this can only be managed digitally and can only be managed through artificial intelligence. So we must live with times. The people that we are looking forward to managing the nuclear power plant are in primary school or preschools that will then come on board to manage this. And their perceptions of doing things is not the normal manual work that we have currently in our normal conventional power plants. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer. Very insightful indeed. And I think we all need to realize that's how big a plant is, because if it can actually run for a period of 80 years, this means that you can imagine we are laying the framework for that plant, and we will not be able to see that plant be decommissioned unless, of course, we do live to be 100 plus. God willing, we will be able to say that we are one of the very few people in the world who has been able to live through a whole cycle of planning a nuclear power program all the way to its construction, commissioning, and decommissioning. And I can tell you that all across that, there is opportunity for dispute resolution. And they will actually begin from, as Ibrahim has said, it starts from even just having the decision and government saying that we have a national position and we're going to pursue a nuclear power program. Human beings raise concerns, and these concerns become conflicts which must be addressed through adequate dispute resolution mechanisms. And that is why C.Arb has given us this opportunity to be able to share that there are indeed opportunities for all ADR practitioners in this space, regardless of the profession. And I would like then to ask Ibrahim to speak to that. As a member of C.Arb himself, maybe you can speak to the opportunities that you can see available for the different practitioners in the ADR space, especially when it comes to energy, the energy sector and energy disputes. Do they have a role, and what would be that role?
Okay.
So Ibrahim?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for that. The first thing I'll say, and just allow me to speak to the opportunities across maybe energy and generally infrastructure space without specification of which side of energy, because energy is energy. And I remember when our senior Jacqueline Waihenya was speaking about nuclear arbitrators. What was going through my mind was that, do we really have nuclear arbitrators, or do we have any specialty called nuclear arbitrators? For me, I'll say that an arbitrator is an arbitrator, but then what will distinguish one to go to that second layer of calling yourself an arbitrator in the specific space of energy is the specialization, the experience you get. And of course, this is informed by, I don't think that we have any qualifications which will make one to be a specialized geothermal or arbitrator or what. But I think the experience, interests, and of course, the continuous learning about the uniqueness of each segment of the sector, not even in energy, even in roads and the sort, construction, is what will actually make somebody use or feel like or be classified to be an arbitrator in the specific space. So for me, I actually want to say that I will not expect that we'll have anybody called an arbitrator, maybe energy, nuclear arbitrator, but then you'll have an arbitrator who has a bias or exposed to or experience or with a reputation in a particular sector. And I think that's what we need to have in mind. But I think the starting point will be there's an opportunity for arbitrators across energy sector without being specific and across the whole complex infrastructure space. Actually, very huge opportunities and opportunities which can be very rewarding because, of course, some of these sectors have, they have large scale pace, and then, of course, the disputes are of high magnitude and of a lot of interest even to the parties. So to that extent, then I think the compensation equally comes, can be quite fulfilling. So yes, there's actually an opportunity for arbitrators, there's an opportunity for mediators, there's equally an opportunity for what we call the expert determinants. And these are now the people, I think that are maybe not so common. These are the people who are actually really, really experts in a particular area. They can take the form of being an expert determinant in terms of quantity surveying, for example, in terms of economics, in terms of even resolving a dispute as to maybe the consumption. And I'll give an example where some people can actually, people have been able to cut a space and create a niche in terms of expert determinants, especially in the PPP projects, whereby maybe if the issue at hand is a technical issue, maybe it's touching a power purchase agreement, it's touching construction of our roads, and maybe something to do with the standards which have been utilized, the quality of materials which have been utilized comes into question, or maybe an issue to do with, for example, in disputes whereby maybe a contractor has been able to deliver a project halfway quarterly, and maybe you want to determine what is payable on quantum merit, then to that extent, you may need an expert determinant. And this is a person who is an expert, subject matter expert, and not necessarily an arbitrator, not a lawyer, but this is somebody who understands that particular field. It can even be something to do with the metering in terms of the energy consumed for a power purchase agreement. So we have opportunities for ADR, stretching for mediation, and for mediation, I speak in the context of the principles I spoke about. Can also involve what we call expert determination, which is now expert determination it's another layer of highly specialized area, whereby the issue which needs to be determined is very specific, and it speaks to a particular profession, and not just a profession. There's some complexity surrounding it. And I think I've been able to mention some of the instances whereby you may need an expert determinant as opposed to an adjudicator or even an arbitrator. Then, of course, the next layer is arbitration, which I think is what most of us are used to. And I think those are several professions within which ADR can be practiced within the energy sector. The other thing maybe most people may not really have thought about is a case, for example, when we are talking about a dispute adjudication board, you can actually have adjudication in two contexts. One, whereby you are looking at avoidance and determination. So that means you can have a DAB members or a member who is involved to facilitate or help the parties avoid a dispute. And that is the case whereby now I was talking about a lot of principles on mediation can be practiced. You can also have a case whereby now you are not dealing with avoidance, but we are dealing with a case whereby the adjudication is dealing with the actual dispute. It has happened and it needs to be resolved. That's also a practice area. Very common, DABs are actually very common in disputes pertaining to EPC contracts, be it our power plant, which is under construction. There's a feeling that the contractor has not been able to perform as per the specifications within the timelines, quality-wise and the sort. So those are some of the areas whereby adjudication can actually apply. Then, of course, arbitration, which I think is what most of us are socialized in. Of course, the case whereby now you have an arbitrator, and then, of course, the claim or dispute is submitted between the arbitrator or the maybe a team of arbitrators, which we call the arbitration tribunal, and they have a role now to determine this dispute, whereby each party submits and the arbitrator is left to make a determination. Of course, the principles for arbitration are also a little bit different and also very different from litigation. So I would actually want to say that there's a lot of opportunity on that side. And I think the other area, apart from now consultancy in the aspect of arbitration, there's the area of capacity building, because actually I find it as the most effective way of managing disputes, because projects are delivered by teams. They are not delivered by dispute resolvers. And you find that for every project, complex project, there will be a team. In public procurement, we call it project implementation teams. And of course, in other procurements, PPP, I think you call it contract implementation team. So another opportunity for ADR practitioners is the opportunity to capacity build the teams. And for this, I'm looking at a case whereby an arbitrator is able to come, have sitting sessions with the team, maybe routinely, or even it can be a session for 1 week, 2 weeks. They are taken through the contract and they are able to be taken through ways in which they can resolve the disputes without necessarily escalating them to an arbitrator or even an adjudicator, and the ways in which those things which essentially would have found themselves before the arbitrator, they can be able to be managed at the level of contract implementation team. So I usually say that a team which is well empowered through capacity building is actually a way better team than a team which relies on dispute resolution through adjudicators, arbitrators, and even mediation, because they are able to resolve so many things because they are well empowered, they understand the principles they need to apply in resolving disputes, avoiding disputes. And at the end of the day, I think the team is likely to deliver more effectively if it's empowered, as opposed to a team which doesn't understand what arbitration is all about, mediation is all about, and the implications of it. Of course, this is not music to the ears for most people because, of course, when you're talking about practice, capacity building is never given serious, consideration in terms of payment. I think people would consider to pay arbitrators or even adjudicators more compared with capacity building. But if you have to ask me, there is more value proposition for capacity building. And I've actually seen it whereby you can capacity build and you get your money guaranteed within a shorter time and without, waiting the way you would have waited if you are dealing with arbitration. So capacity building is equally very important. And I think our senior Waihenya spoke to various bodies whereby you can be certified as a FIDIC trainer, as a FIDIC expert, the FIDIC King's College, all those, bodies. There are so many universities also delivering that. Locally, I think we have Strathmore. Then, of course, we have Chartered Institute, we have NCIA, and we also equally have very good law firms and even QS firms, which are able to capacity build. And I think with that, then it becomes very easy for any practitioner to also make a little bit money and there through capacity building to the teams. So that's also a framework. I've seen it work whereby, yes, you can have a DAB, but within the DAB or the consultant, you can also create obligation or a scope which includes capacity building to the team. So I think those are some of the things one may need to have in mind as we practice that we should not just look at the pie as it is, that it's limited to the actual consultancy that can stretch to even capacity building, either within the consultancy or even as a standalone assignment. Sir, I think those would be my comments about the available opportunities. And I think it's also good to mention, sorry, I forgot to mention that even in the academia, in the academia space, academia is actually looking for disputes resolvers, trainers, and not necessarily at the university level, even at the technical university levels, whereby you find that the technical universities or colleges are offering technical subjects to do with engineering, and dispute resolution becomes a critical component for any practitioner within that space. So I think we just need to open our minds and know that those opportunities exist, but it's us to tell people how we can, for example, if you are a practitioner and where you are coming from the village, there's a technical university or even a technical college offering technical courses, civil engineering and the sort. People can even appear as guest lecturers. You can also appear to even lecture on part-time. So I think for me, I would say that the world is our oyster as ADR practitioners. But then you need to open our eyes so that you can be able to seize and also point out some of these opportunities, because some people may be sitting on opportunities, but nobody has ever told them why even a curriculum speaking to the things we are discussing matters, even to a technical university or even college.
Very, very true, very true. And I think it's actually from the perspective of, having people coming in from outside to come and do things that we ourselves have the capacity to do, but it is because we don't have the technical know-how of that arena. And as you have said, you will not be able to manage or handle disputes if you know absolutely nothing about the area. And here is where capacity building comes into play. I remember when I first joined the nuclear field, I was as green as some of you, and Engineer Ohaga was throwing around uranium pellets and fission and fusion, and I was just like, am I back in a physics class, or what is going on here? Will I be able to learn all this? And I was actually taken through a program whereby I was just informed about how a nuclear power plant operates. How do we generate that energy? How do we ensure that the public is protected from any harmful effects of that power generation? And I learned so much about the nuclear field that the average Kenyan may not know. And that is why we are having this webinar, and I continue to thank C.Arb, because as arbitrators, as adjudicators, as mediators, until you delve into the nuclear space, you will not be able to make an informed decision or give an advisory over whether a dispute is actually, if there is actually even a dispute in the first place. So I want Engineer Eric Ohaga to tell us, where can we get this capacity building? How can we learn more about nuclear so that even when we are speaking to other people, we are speaking from a point of information? And even if we want to advance our studies, where do we go? And this will go a long way in building this country's capacity to say that if we are looking for nuclear arbitrators, if we are looking for nuclear mediators, if we are looking for nuclear adjudicators, we are not going outside. We have the capacity within, and that's nice. So Engineer Ohaga, please take us through how we can be able to gain this capacity, what arena is out there, and how can we be able to access this?
Thank you so much, Sarah. And when you look at the nuclear energy and the infrastructure elements that each country has to demonstrate that you are developing, one of the critical aspects is human resource. And this is the competencies of the Kenyan people to undertake all issues related to nuclear energy. And for sure, I can say some of the claims, when I look at the nuclear liability emanating from the disaster that happened in Fukushima, and it was realized that the claims that were coming from the people living near the nuclear power plant rose to about 20,000. And in Japan, it's like practicing is actually restricted to certain regions. And in the areas around Fukushima, there are only about 50 experts, could I say counsel or arbitrators or mediators that could handle such kind of cases. And therefore, that was taken as a challenge. And some of these claims and cases took about 10 years to be concluded. And of course, the issue of capacity keeps on coming. And perception is also another critical element in the nuclear industry. It's a very motive area. Everybody has its own way of thinking. When you mention nuclear, they see destruction. Not until you get into that particular space and you realize that for any country that has transformed itself from a third world country to a first world country, it has a nuclear power plant, because energy is an enabler to the development of any given country. And when you talk about going to Singapore, you have seen the denominator there has been the development of adequate, reliable power. And this relies on the people and the competence, the skills that are required to be able to drive this agenda item. And in Kenya and in the world, we are a member state of the International Atomic Energy Agency from 1954. And as a member state, we benefit from certain training programs. We call them technical cooperation program. So in International Atomic Energy Agency, provided you're a member state, you are able to plan for your requirements. in your country and provide for them and request for them through an integrated work plan for purposes of training your people in the various areas that you require. So now when you look at now the requirements of arbitration, mediation, this ADR area, we have opportunities within the International Atomic Energy Agency to benefit from this capacity building. And we can organize for short-term workshops, training programs that last for a week or even 2 weeks in areas that you require as a country. And in this case now we are talking about ADR. We will be able to do this because there are countries that have had this technology for a very long time, 70 years. And they have had issues of ADR coming up from concept development all the way to decommissioning, because we have had countries that have already decommissioned their nuclear power plant. So there are opportunities that are organized around short-term trainings. We also have scientific visits, and this gives a practical opportunity to practitioners, councils who was to broaden their knowledge on matters arbitration in the practical manner. And this is where we organize for scientific visits to countries that have practiced in this. And Kenyan people are able to go and benchmark and learn on the job on some of these aspects through a scientific visit. This one again take about 2 to 3 weeks, again through the ambit of the International Atomic Energy Agency. We also have the International Nuclear Law Institute. I think this is also within the International Atomic Energy Agency, where you are able to develop your skills on nuclear law and other aspects that go into this. We also want to localize, and we've talked about local content being a major issue in our country and African as a whole, that we talk about localization as we go into this industry. What are we talking about? Sustainability. That we might start as an EPC where almost 100% of the services, works, goods are coming from foreign countries. But with time, we have a strategy to localize this technology up to 99 or 100%, where we are able to then export even our technology. And this again is about capacity building. So we are looking at collaboration between institutions from other countries that already have this technology coming, and capacity building our local institutions like C.Arb now and other universities, so that we domesticate this knowledge within our realms, so that we can reach as many people as possible. So the training opportunities are available through the National Liaison Office, which is stationed at the Nuclear Power and Energy Agency. And our CEO is the National Liaison Officer that coordinates all these trainings for the Kenyan people. So they're always available. We have a digital network that is available for anyone in the world, anyone in this country, provided your country is a member state of IEA. You can be able to log in that InTouch system and apply for any training opportunities that is relevant to your area of operation, so that your capacity can be built. So we are happy to coordinate the capacity building of the Kenyan ADR experts, so that as we develop this program, we start early, so that by the time we are commissioning and we are operating and decommissioning the nuclear power plant, then the people that will be relevant in this area will have enough knowledge to deal with the program. Many claims come and we are not able to look at them because they will take time because of lack of knowledge in the various areas of the development of the nuclear power plant. So if you are able to close these gaps in the knowledge skills, then we can be assured that we'll be able to make good progress as we deploy the first nuclear power plant in our country as a whole. We're also looking at, of course, once Kenya shows the way, we have the East African brothers that are also thinking about this. And this therefore means that we have various opportunities across beyond the borders. Within East Africa, we have Uganda, Tanzania, Ethiopia also considering the same. And once Kenya takes the lead, and therefore we can be able to have that professional mobility even across the continent in that particular regard. So we are happy to assist in regards to any training programs or any capacity building that might be required by any expert in this particular field. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Engineer. And I hope you got that. That is the InTouch platform. All you have to do is Google IAEA InTouch Plus, and you can be able to sign in and open an account. Then you will be able to see all the available training in your area and then make the application. So I think we have now reached a point where we can open up for questions. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. So if anybody has a question, you can maybe raise your hand and unmute and pose a question to any of our panelists today. Okay, I'm requesting Engineer Ohaga, you can post the details of the InTouch on the platform, maybe a link to it so that participants can be able to use it to access the site so that they can make the applications. I'm not seeing any questions, so I believe you've all been nuclearized. That's the word. When you have an understanding of nuclear and an appreciation of it, then you have been nuclearized. So I will ask the panelists just to share some parting shot before we hand the program back to C.Arb. So CS Kitoo, you can be able to give us a parting shot and closing remarks, and then we will proceed to Engineer Ohaga and then myself, and then we can be able to hand the program back to C.Arb. Over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. A few comments. For me, I'll say that opportunities, we reach out to the people who are prepared in advance. It makes a lot of sense to be prepared for the opportunity so that then when the opportunities come and people are asking, okay, who can do that? You are able to come and say, hey, I'm prepared, I'm an expert in this particular area, as opposed to a case whereby now you start preparing once the opportunity is there, because certainly somebody will grab it. So I'm just arguing for a case for agility, a case for curiousness. We know naturally, as human beings, we have our professions. There is what we like and there is what we are known for. But I think it's also important to appreciate that the best dispute resolvers are ones who are well informed across several sectors. But then if you want to have a competitive edge, then you need to look into those emerging areas and try as much as possible to create expertise of notoriety in a particular area. And I think this area of dispute resolution, especially in the energy sector and emergingly within the nuclear space, is actually a very important one. And I think my clarion call for the participants is that you need to be very agile. You need to appreciate dispute resolution across, the full cycle, because I think that brings a lot of efficacy. And then, of course, it makes you be prepared for the opportunities which are also emerging. Because traditionally, the way we know ADR, it's not the way it's being practiced. We need to be curious to look for the opportunities and point out those opportunities, even to the people who we are looking at to provide the opportunities. So I think capacity building is actually very important at a personal capacity level. But then, of course, that curiousness to be able to understand the emerging trends, emerging areas of opportunities is actually very, 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 very important. As pertains to available opportunity, I know there is this issue which Engineer Ohaga mentioned, and I think even you, Sarah, you mentioned, that as a country, I think we are still at a point whereby we still don't believe in our own. But I think we've been observing, especially in terms of participation of local professionals across borders, regional bodies dealing with arbitration, dispute determination. Kenya has actually grown, and Kenya is actually rated very highly in Africa and outside Africa in terms of having very smart professional dispute resolvers across ADR and even litigation. So I think the world has equally opened for the Kenyans to participate. And I think what we need to do as local professionals, and these are the ones looking for the opportunities or the ones sitting on the opportunities, is to be able to open up this opportunity and also create a culture whereby we can trust our own. But I think as we trust our own, then the challenge of the practitioners is also for them to, scale up their expertise in terms of these emerging areas and also in terms of reputation to deliver optimal solutions, dealing with the issues of integrity, of course. And I think with that, then there's nothing which will prevent these opportunities from being made available to our local experts, as opposed to our case whereby, we fly people from outside the country, they come, they do what they need to do, and often those consultants don't do anything better than the Kenyans, and all that money goes outside. So I think we need to embrace that. So we need trust. We need to be deliberate to create opportunities. We need to be very vigilant to spot these opportunities, both as users and also as providers. And then the other challenge is, of course, for the practitioners, in terms of building capacity. Sometimes I tell people that you do not need to get the opportunity in the name of your own firm or your name. When you lack capacity, you feel like if you go alone, you will not be able to get the opportunity. Then a very strategic way is to enter into what we call joint venture arrangements for those bids, joint venture arrangements for those consultancies. Sometimes you can even decide to lie there and wait to be made as some contractor or some consultant. And I think that avails opportunities, even with lesser risk than if you are engaged directly. So I think we also need to be deliberate for those ones who are structuring these transactions to create, that freedom for parties to place bids as joint ventures, consortiums in association, and permit subcontracting or subconsultancy, so that then those people who ideally, if they went alone, would not have gotten it. Then you open the space for them, and I think that speaks to sustainable development and creating opportunity. Because the beauty is that once you are part of a consortium, then what you did not have, what you realize is that as you deliver the project, you get to learn a lot of things. And ultimately, what happens is that you are able to scale yourself up, and perhaps the next opportunity will be bidding in your own by yourself. So that's my clarion call. But the parting shot is that ADR is live, opportunities are there, but I think we need to be vigilant to identify them and be able to flag them out, because if we ignore ADR, then of course litigation becomes very expensive. So I think it's a deliberate effort call for all of us, both the practitioners and of course the people who sit in the positions whereby these opportunities also are able to come. Sarah, those are my comments.
Thank you. Thank you so much, CS. Very, very good comments on that. And now we are over to Engineer Ohaga.
Thank you so much. I must say that if you want to go very fast, you go alone. But if you want to go fast and far, actually go together. I think that is the reason why we are bringing on board this particular team here. And we are looking forward to having you as the ambassadors for Atoms for Peace through the arbitration, mediation, and these other methods. So we are looking forward to collaborating with the membership of C.Arb so that we can make this a reality in our country and beyond. And I think this is the first step that we are making. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Engineer. Thank you. I want to thank our panelists, Engineer Ohaga, CS Ibrahim Kitoo, FCS Jacqueline Waihenya, and all the participants who have joined us today for this discussion. And it's just the beginning. We are going to have many, many more opportunities where we can dive into the nitty-gritties of the peaceful use of nuclear technology in Kenya and the role that ADR will play in its application. And just for your information, we are already using nuclear technology in Kenya. Those X-ray machines that you're using, the MRIs, all that is nuclear technology. And we look forward to engaging further with you. And once again, we want to thank C.Arb for the opportunity to partner and be able to nuclearize C.Arb members and who will then use this opportunity. And I now hand over back to Clement.